Welcome to The Standard. From Vancouver, I'm Peter Klein. Tonight, a mathematician who says he just might be better at judging hockey talent than the coaches and scouts in the NHL. That's a bit later. But first, losing a loved one. Welcome back to The Standard. My next guest says he just may be a better judge of hockey talent than all the general managers and scouts in the NHL. Dr. Michael Schuckers is a statistics professor at St. Lawrence University in New York. He uses mathematical data to predict the performance of players, and NHL clubs are starting to take notice. Welcome.
Welcome, Peter.
First, I should reveal to our audience that you and I know each other. We were college roommates.
Yes.
Sort of like Al Gore and Tommy Lee Jones.
Something similar to that, yes.
So you started compiling this research on the performance of players. First of all, what's the data you're compiling?
So the data that I was here in Vancouver to talk about at the Statistics Conference recently is data on spatial locations for every shot taken in the NHL over the past 2 regular seasons.
So, I mean, this is data, some of this data, you know, maybe not using fancy terms like spatial locations, but I mean, a lot of hobbyists collect this data. Presumably some folks within the NHL clubs collect some of this data. What's different about what you're doing?
Well, one of the things I think that's different is that as a statistics professor, I've got a wider array of statistical tools that I can use to sort of create sort of maps of the performance of players. So, for example, Roberto Luongo, who's the fantastic goalie for Vancouver, we can take a look at how he performs for shot locations across the ice.
So Luongo is a good example because he was also the goalie for Team Canada in the Olympics. Obviously, someone who's carefully watched and observed by coaches, managers, scouts. Give me a specific thing that you would know that they might not be aware of?
So, I mean, they would likely be aware of some of his strengths and weaknesses, but one of the things that the data can do is confirm or maybe alter that perception. We also, besides having sort of a spatial location, we know where a particular shooter, when they took a shot, was shooting. So were they going for glove side or were they going for lower left on the goal?
Well, I mean, one of the things that's interesting about what you're doing is there is a sort of a legacy of bad decisions within sports. I don't know if it's been studied in hockey, but I know in baseball, for instance. Michael Lewis wrote the book Moneyball a few years ago and wrote about how baseball scouts do traditionally a poor job because they have their own biases or whatever, right, than people who actually look at the specific hard numbers. Have you found a similar sort of biases or concerns in hockey?
I think that we're starting to get to the point where we could make that sort of evaluation. I think it's, you know, right now it's just the data. This is a fairly new analysis we've been able to perform over the summer. And so I don't know we're at the point yet where we could look at comparing a scout's performance to performance we would have from the data. But I would concur. I think from what we've seen in baseball in particular, we have knowledge that human perception is often incorrect in terms of the ability to project how a player is going to do. One of the things that scouts tend to do, and we know this from baseball, is they tend to evaluate a player in terms of how good they are at what appears to be the things necessary to play hockey, and not so much the things that actually yield performance results.
Right. So they're sort of enjoying the game and seeing a lot of great performances, but aren't looking at the hard data.
Right. But one of my collaborators is the women's hockey coach at St. Lawrence. And one of the things that he has done in sort of recruiting players is he often looks at the players who are considered to be the best recruits, and then when he's looking at junior league performance, and what he sees is that the performance on the ice doesn't necessarily match with who folks are considered to be the best players, the best prospects.
Well, you're in Canada right now, and you sort of visited our country here in the midst of a rare statistical scandal, I guess, or a discussion. I mean, you don't usually see statistics discussed in news shows, and
we would call that an unlikely event.
That's right. But basically, the government of Canada has decided to forego the mandatory long-form census and basically, correct me if I'm wrong, but basically send out these long forms, and it's up to people if they want to fill it out or not. And there's a lot of concern, both by private industry and within the government, that we're going to get inaccurate information. As a statistician, are you concerned by this methodology?
I think I share the concerns of the Statistical Society of Canada in that this idea of so late in the process where statisticians won't have a chance to evaluate or model the differences between those that fill out the short and those that fill out the long. That information that we get from the long form, and that is those folks who choose to fill out the long form, potentially is going to, in the colloquial, sort of skew the information that we have.
So the idea is certain types of people will choose to fill out the long form, whether it's people who are unemployed and have the time to do it, or who are, people who are lazy aren't going to fill it out, so you're not going to get accurate
right.
details.
The worry is that on some of the things that are being measured, those that choose to fill out the long form are in some way different from those that don't. And so when you go to take that long form and you want to use it to sort of project to the whole population, you're going to have information that's not necessarily representative of everyone that you want.
Okay. Well, we have to take a break, but when we come back, I want to talk to you about some of the other work you're doing. You're working with the U.S. Department of Homeland Security on biometrics like fingerprints and iris scans. Some fascinating work, a new book that you've come out with. More with Dr. Michael Schuckers after this quick break.